The words cut deeper than any knife could. Teaching? Really, Vanessa? With your potential, you could have been running a Fortune 500 company by now. Instead, you're stuck babysitting teenagers for minimum wage. I gripped my wine glass tighter, forcing a polite smile as my sister-in-law Charlene's perfectly manicured hand gestured dismissively across my brother-in-law's elaborate dining table. Another family dinner, another round of subtle, and not so subtle, jabs at my career choice. My name is Vanessa, and I've spent the last 8 years teaching high school English, helping shape young minds and watching students discover their potential. It's my passion, my calling. But to Charlene, it might as well be a personal insult. Actually, I started, my voice steadier than I felt. I just got 3 of my students into Ivy League schools this year. How adorable, Charlene cooed, her voice dripping with condescension. I just closed a 7-figure deal that'll transform the entire tech sector. But hey, 3 college acceptance letters are nice too. My husband Calvin reached under the table and squeezed my knee. Char, come on. Vanessa's making a real difference. Of course she is, little brother, Charlene interrupted, taking another sip of her wine. Someone has to teach the children of actual successful people. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. As I passed the kitchen, I heard Charlene's voice floating through the partially open door. I just don't understand what Calvin sees in her, she was saying to Travis, her husband. He could have married someone ambitious, someone who could have been his equal. Instead, he settled for a teacher. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. Honey, Travis replied, sounding tired, maybe not everyone measures success the same way you do. Please, success is success. There's a reason my salary has more zeros than hers. I slipped away before they could notice me, my cheeks burning. Instead of returning to the dining room, I grabbed my coat and car keys. I'm not feeling well, I texted Calvin. Headed home. Love you. 20 minutes later, I found myself in my classroom, surrounded by the familiar comfort of vocabulary posters and student artwork. My fingers traced the edge of a thank you card from Maria, a sophomore who'd finally found her voice through poetry. Ms. Davis? A voice startled me from the doorway. It was Caitlin, one of my former students who'd graduated last year and now volunteered as my teaching assistant. Caitlin, what are you doing here so late? She held up a stack of papers. Finishing the layouts for the literary magazine. Are you okay? You look like I've been crying. I laughed weakly, wiping my eyes. Just family stuff. Caitlin set down the papers and perched on one of the student desks. Want to talk about it? You've listened to enough of my drama over the years. I told her about dinner, about Charlene, about the constant belittling of my chosen profession. As I spoke, Caitlin's expression grew increasingly indignant. That's ridiculous, she burst out. You're the reason I'm majoring in creative writing now. You're the reason half my class actually graduated. Remember Tommy? The kid everyone had given up on? He's in college now because you stayed after school for 3 months straight helping him with his essays. I smiled, remembering Tommy's graduation day, how he'd hugged me and whispered, "Thanks for not giving up on me, Ms. D." Thanks, Caitlin. Sometimes I just need a reminder of why I do this. Well, your sister-in-law sounds like she needs a reminder of what real success looks like, Caitlin said, her eyes sparking with an idea. You know what would be amazing? If you could show her how many lives you've actually changed. Like, on a bigger scale. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucy, my best friend and fellow English teacher. Emergency wine and venting session? I've got chocolate. Rain check on the literary magazine? I asked Caitlin. I've got a date with a bottle of Merlot and my best friend. As I drove to Lucy's house, Charlene's words kept echoing in my head. But this time, instead of pain, I felt something else stirring. Determination. Maybe Caitlin was right. Maybe it was time to show my sister-in-law exactly what a mere teacher could accomplish. I just had no idea then how dramatically that determination would change my life, or how sweetly karma would eventually serve its justice. You've got to be kidding me, Lucy said, nearly spitting out her wine as she read the email on my phone. The National Education Reform Initiative wants to meet with you? Vanessa, this is huge. I snatched my phone back, rereading the email for the 10th time. It has to be a mistake. Why would they want me? Oh, I don't know, Lucy rolled her eyes. Maybe because your students have the highest college acceptance rate in the district? Or because that literacy program you started has spread to 3 other schools? We were sprawled across Lucy's living room floor, surrounded by empty chocolate wrappers and half-graded papers. It had been 2 weeks since the disaster dinner with Charlene, and I'd thrown myself into work to avoid thinking about it. The email mentioned something about educational ambassadors, I said, scrolling through it again. Whatever that means. It means, Lucy sat up straight, suddenly serious, that someone important noticed what you're doing here. When's the meeting? Tomorrow at 4 p.m., but I can't. If you say you can't go, I will personally drag you there myself, Lucy interrupted. This could be your chance to make real change, beyond just our school. My phone buzzed with a text from Calvin. Charlene's hosting a charity brunch next weekend. Please come. I'll make it up to you. Lucy read the text over my shoulder and groaned. Perfect timing. You can tell her about your fancy meeting with Neri when she starts her usual teaching is glorified babysitting routine. I'm not going to the brunch, I said firmly, and I'm not sure about this meeting either. What if what? Lucy challenged. What if you actually succeed? What if you get to help more students? What if you prove Charlene wrong about everything she's ever said about teachers? The next day, I found myself in the gleaming lobby of a downtown office building, my heart hammering against my ribs. A tall man with salt and pepper hair approached, his smile warm and genuine. Vanessa, I'm Xander Allen, Executive Director of Neri. Thank you for coming. He led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. To my surprise, there were several other people already seated around the table. These are some of our current educational ambassadors, Xander explained. They're here to share their experiences. For the next hour, I listened as teachers from across the country described their work, advocating for education reform, speaking at conferences, implementing innovative teaching methods. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of doing on a larger scale. We've been following your work, Vanessa, Xander said finally. The literacy program you developed, your success rates with at-risk students, it's exactly what we're looking for. I'm just doing my job, I mumbled. No, a woman across the table said firmly. You're doing much more than that. You're changing lives. Xander slid a folder across the table. We'd like you to join our ambassador program. You'd keep teaching, but also work with us to implement your methods in other schools. There's some travel involved, speaking engagements, policy meetings. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Calvin. Charlene says she's sorry about dinner. Please come to brunch. She wants to make amends. I stared at the message, then at the folder in front of me. Something clicked into place. What exactly would this role involve? I heard myself asking. Xander's eyes lit up. You'd be the face of educational reform in your region. We'd provide training, resources, support staff. Support staff? I interrupted, thinking of Caitlin. Of course. You'll need help managing everything. The speaking engagements alone. Speaking engagements? Conferences, fundraisers, charity events, he explained. Our ambassadors are quite in demand. My heart skipped a beat. Charity events, like the ones Charlene was always bragging about attending. When would I start? We have an orientation next month. After that, it's up to you how quickly you want to scale up your involvement. I took a deep breath, thinking about my students, about Caitlin's words, about Charlene's sneering comments, about all the other teachers out there fighting the same battles I was. I'm in, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Xander beamed. Welcome aboard. Later that night, I finally replied to Calvin's text. Tell Charlene I'll be at brunch, and tell her I have some exciting news to share. Lucy's response to my update was immediate. OMG, yes. Please tell me I can be there when you tell Charlene. For the first time in years, I found myself looking forward to seeing my sister-in-law. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above. And I was about to rise higher than Charlene ever imagined I could. And then she just sat there, mouth hanging open like a goldfish, Lucy cackled, mimicking Charlene's expression from the brunch. I wish I'd recorded it. The best part was Travis actually congratulating me, I said, sorting through a stack of business cards on my desk. Did you see Charlene's face when he said he'd always admired teachers? It had been 3 weeks since I'd dropped my ambassador news at Charlene's brunch, and the memory still made me smile. But now, reality was setting in. My classroom was becoming command central for what felt like an educational revolution. Ms. Davis? Caitlin poked her head in, now my official assistant thanks to Nary's funding. The principal from Roosevelt High is on line 1. They want to know if you can present your literacy program next month. Tell them yes, but I was interrupted by my phone buzzing, another email from Xander. Vanessa, major opportunity. Annual Education Innovation Gala coming up. Need you as keynote speaker. Call me ASAP. Lucy peered over my shoulder. Holy, do you know what this means? Before I could answer, Caitlin rushed back in. Ms. Davis, you're trending on Twitter. That video from your speech at the state education conference, it's everywhere. I grabbed my laptop and sure enough, there was my face, passionately explaining why we needed to revolutionize how we teach literature to modern students. The video had over 100,000 views. Look at the comments, Caitlin scrolled excitedly. This is the kind of teacher I wish I'd had. Finally, someone speaking truth about education reform. Where was she when I was failing English? My phone rang. Calvin. Babe, have you seen the news? You're on the front page of the education section. What? Which paper? All of them. Charlene just called me, actually. She seemed different. Asked if you'd consider speaking at her company's next corporate social responsibility event. I put the phone on speaker just as another call came through. Xander again. I'll call him back, I told Calvin. What did you tell Charlene? That you're booked solid for the next 3 months, which, by the way, we need to talk about. I barely see you anymore. Guilt gnawed at my stomach. He was right. Between teaching, speaking engagements, and program development, I was spreading myself thin. I know, I'm sorry. Dinner tonight? Just us? Actually, Calvin hesitated. Charlene and Travis invited us over. She insisted. Said something about wanting to properly acknowledge your achievements. I muted the phone. Lucy, what do you think? Trap? Absolutely, she nodded. But go anyway. Show her the new you. I unmuted. Okay, tell them we'll come. That evening, Charlene's mansion felt different. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. Her usual intimidating aura seemed diminished somehow. Vanessa! She air-kissed my cheeks. You look professional. Is that a Diane von Furstenberg? Target, actually, I smiled. But thanks. Travis appeared with drinks. Vanessa, I showed that video of yours to our board. They were impressed. Very impressed. Charlene's smile tightened slightly. Yes, well, who knew teaching could be so influential? Though I suppose it's not really teaching anymore, is it? More like consulting. Oh, I'm still in the classroom every day, I corrected her. That's non-negotiable. It's where the real work happens. But surely with your new platform, Charlene pressed, you'll eventually move into full-time speaking and consulting? The money alone is nothing compared to seeing a student's face when they finally understand Shakespeare, I finished. Or helping a kid who hates reading discover their favorite book. Travis nodded approvingly. That's what I love about your approach, Vanessa. You're not just talking about change, you're actually doing it. Charlene's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and nearly dropped her wine glass. Everything okay? Calvin asked. Yes, just... She looked at me strangely. The Education Innovation Gala. My company is one of the main sponsors, and they just announced this year's keynote speaker. My phone buzzed at the same moment. Xander's message. It's official! You're our keynote speaker! Charlene's face did that goldfish thing again. You're the keynote speaker? Looks like it, I said, trying to keep my voice casual while my heart raced. Maybe we can collaborate on something. After all, education and corporate responsibility should go hand in hand, right? The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, confusion, and something else. Something that looked almost like respect. As we left that night, I heard Travis say to Charlene, Maybe it's time to rethink our company's approach to education initiatives. Charlene's response was too quiet to hear, but her expression stayed with me. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about proving her wrong anymore. It was about something bigger, something that could actually change lives, including just maybe hers. No, no, no! I crumpled another draft of my speech and tossed it into the growing pile by my desk. This isn't right either. Ms. Davis, Caitlin said gently, picking up the discarded paper. This is the 12th version. The gala's tomorrow night. And Charlene will be in the front row, probably with her entire corporate board, I groaned. Everything has to be perfect. Lucy burst into my classroom, waving her phone. Have you seen the guest list? It just leaked online. Every major education reform advocate in the country will be there, plus half of Silicon Valley's tech giants. My stomach lurched. Not helping, Lucy. Sorry, she perched on my desk. But seriously, you've got this. Just talk about what you know, what you love. That's what I've been trying to tell her, Caitlin agreed. Show them what you showed us. My phone buzzed. A text from Calvin. Charlene just called. Says she's giving a speech too. Something about corporate investment in education. You okay? Perfect, I muttered. Just perfect. Wait, Lucy grabbed my phone. She's speaking too? That wasn't on the program. Last minute addition, Caitlin confirmed, checking her tablet. Right before your keynote. I stood up, pacing the classroom. She's going to try to steal my thunder. Make it all about corporate funding and bottom lines. Then don't let her, Lucy said firmly. Show them what real education looks like. A knock at the door made us all jump. It was Travis. Sorry to interrupt, he said, looking uncomfortable. I thought you should know. Charlene's been practicing her speech all week. She's nervous. Nervous? I couldn't hide my surprise. Charlene? Look, Travis stepped inside, closing the door. She won't admit it, but your success has shaken her. The board's been talking about redirecting funds from her tech initiatives to education programs. Programs like yours. Is that why she added herself to the speaker list? Lucy asked. Travis nodded. She's trying to prove she's still relevant. But between us, I think she's fighting a losing battle. After he left, I sat back down at my desk, staring at the scattered speech drafts. Ms. Davis? Caitlin picked up one of the papers. Remember when Tommy was struggling with his college essay? What did you tell him? To write from his heart, I said automatically. To tell his truth. So maybe, she smiled, you should take your own advice? That night, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Calvin brought me tea and kissed my forehead. You know what's funny? He said. Charlene used to practice her speeches in front of me when we were kids. She'd get so worked up she'd make herself sick. I looked up. Really? Yeah, she's always been terrified of failure. That's why she pushes so hard, acts so, well, you know. Something clicked. I started typing, the words finally flowing naturally. The next evening, I stood backstage at the gala, adjusting my dress, a simple but elegant black number that Lucy had helped me choose. Caitlin appeared with water and a reassuring smile. Full house, she reported. And guess who's sitting right next to Charlene, Xander, and the entire Nary board? I peeked through the curtain. Charlene was there, looking immaculate as always, but her hands were shaking slightly as she arranged and rearranged her note cards. The program began. I half listened to the opening speeches, my heart pounding. Then Charlene was introduced. She strode to the podium, every inch the confident executive. But I noticed the slight tremor in her voice as she began. Education is about numbers, she started. Return on investment, measurable outcomes. As business leaders, we need to approach education like any other business venture. I watched the audience's reactions. Some nodded, but others shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't what they'd come to hear. 5 minutes, Caitlin whispered, squeezing my hand. I looked down at my speech. The real one, the true one. Not about numbers or outcomes or corporate buzzwords. About Tommy and Maria and every student who'd ever sat in my classroom believing they weren't good enough. And now, the announcer's voice boomed, our keynote speaker, a teacher who's revolutionizing education one classroom at a time. Charlene returned backstage, passing close enough that I caught the scent of her expensive perfume. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw something there I'd never seen before. Fear. Good luck, she whispered, surprising us both. I took a deep breath and walked toward the podium. The spotlight hit me, and I could feel hundreds of eyes watching, waiting. When I was a little girl, I began, my voice strong and clear, I believed that books could change the world. The truth, my truth, was about to take center stage. And for once, I wasn't afraid of Charlene hearing it. When I was a little girl, I believed that books could change the world. Today, standing in my classroom, I know they do. My voice carried across the hushed auditorium. But it's not just about books. It's about the student who stays after class to tell you they finally understand poetry. It's about the kid who swears they hate reading until they find that one story that changes everything. From the podium, I could see Charlene in the front row, her face unreadable. Next to her, Xander was leaning forward, completely engaged. Last month, a student asked me why I became a teacher instead of choosing a real career. Scattered laughs rippled through the audience. I told her about Tommy. I caught Caitlin's eye off stage. She nodded encouragingly. Tommy was the kid everyone had given up on. Failing grades, behavioral issues, zero interest in education. But one day, I caught him drawing elaborate comics in his notebook instead of taking notes. The room was silent now, hanging on every word. Instead of confiscating his notebook, I asked him to tell me his story. It turned out he had a whole universe in his head. Complex characters, intricate plot lines. So I made him a deal. He could write his story, but he had to learn proper grammar and structure to do it justice. I saw Charlene shift in her seat, her fingers drumming nervously on her armrest. Today, Tommy's studying creative writing in college. His first graphic novel comes out next year. I paused, letting that sink in. That's what education really is. Not test scores or ROI metrics, but recognizing potential in unexpected places. Travis reached over and squeezed Charlene's hand. She pulled away. We talk about education reform like it's about systems and statistics. But real reform happens one student at a time, one breakthrough at a time. It happens when we stop treating education like a business and start treating it like what it is, a transformation. The next 10 minutes flew by as I shared more stories. Maria finding her voice through poetry, James discovering his love for science, Sarah realizing she could be the first in her family to go to college. These students don't need our pity or our corporate initiatives, I said, looking directly at Charlene now. They need our belief in their potential. They need teachers who see them, who fight for them, who refuse to let them be reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. Charlene's face had gone pale. She reached for her water glass with a shaking hand. So yes, we need reform, but not the kind that comes from boardrooms and bottom lines. We need reform that starts in classrooms, that recognizes teaching isn't just a job, it's a calling. And every time we dismiss it as just teaching or glorified babysitting, we fail not just our educators, but our future. The silence in the room was electric. I stand before you not just as a teacher, but as proof that one person who believes in education can create ripples that become waves. Imagine what we could do if we all believed. I stepped back from the podium as the room erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering. Xander was beaming. Travis was on his feet, clapping enthusiastically. Charlene remained seated, staring straight ahead. As I made my way backstage, Caitlin rushed to hug me. That was incredible! Did you see their faces? Lucy appeared, wiping tears from her eyes. You destroyed it, and Charlene looked like she was going to... Excuse me. A quiet voice interrupted us. We turned to find Charlene standing there, looking smaller somehow without her usual confident posture. Vanessa, she started, then stopped. For the first time ever, she seemed at a loss for words. The board wants to meet with you, she finally managed. They're talking about redirecting our entire education funding initiative. They want you to lead it. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. The woman who had dismissed my career choice for years was now watching it eclipse her own. Charlene, I began, but she held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. She turned and walked away quickly, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Calvin found me moments later, wrapping me in a tight hug. That was amazing, babe. But are you okay? I watched Charlene's retreating figure, remembering Travis's words about her fear of failure. I think I finally understand something about your sister. Ms. Davis, Caitlin called out. The press wants photos, and Xander says there are some people you need to meet. As I moved to follow her, I caught a glimpse of Charlene through a side door, sitting alone in an empty conference room, her face in her hands. The victory I'd imagined feeling suddenly tasted different. This wasn't the end I'd expected. But then again, maybe it wasn't the end at all. Coming, I called to Caitlin, straightening my shoulders. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I'd found my voice, and I wasn't going to stop using it. The board wants to move forward immediately, Xander announced, sliding a thick folder across the conference table. Full funding, complete autonomy, and you'll be heading the entire education initiative. I glanced at the salary figure and nearly choked on my coffee. It was more money than I'd make in 5 years of teaching. And Charlene? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Reassigned to tech development, Xander replied. She's not taking it well. It had been 3 days since the gala, and I hadn't heard a word from my sister-in-law. Calvin said she wasn't returning his calls either. Speaking of Charlene, Lucy chimed in from her spot by the window. You might want to see this. She handed me her phone. On the screen was Charlene's latest LinkedIn post. After careful consideration, I'm stepping down from my position to pursue other opportunities. She quit? I looked up, shocked. But she loves her job. Loved, Xander corrected. Things change. People change. My phone buzzed. A text from Travis. Can we meet? It's about Charlene. An hour later, I found Travis at a small coffee shop downtown, looking exhausted. She hasn't left the house in days, he said, stirring his untouched latte. Just sits in her home office, staring at her awards wall. I've never seen her like this. I never meant to. I know, he interrupted, but you need to understand something about Charlene. Everything she's ever done has been about proving herself. Her parents always told her she had to be the best, had to win at everything. When you came along, I threatened that, I finished. You didn't just threaten it. You completely upended her worldview. She built her identity around corporate success, around being the one who made it. Now, my phone buzzed again. Caitlin. Emergency at school. Need you ASAP. I found Caitlin in my classroom, surrounded by students. To my surprise, they were all former graduates, including Tommy. What's going on? We heard about the new position, Tommy said. About you maybe leaving teaching. How did you... Social media, another student, Maria, cut in. Everyone's talking about it, about how you're going to run this huge corporate program. But you can't leave, Tommy added. Who's going to help other kids like me? I looked at their faces, these students who'd become so much more than just names on a roster. Then I thought about Charlene, sitting alone in her home office, surrounded by empty achievements. Ms. Davis? Caitlin stepped forward. Remember what you told me when I was struggling with college applications? Success isn't about winning, it's about making a difference. My phone rang. Calvin. Babe, you need to come to Charlene's, now. 20 minutes later, I stood in Charlene's pristine living room, watching my sister-in-law pace back and forth. I don't need your pity, she snapped before I could speak. I don't need anything from you. Good, I replied. Because I'm not here to offer pity. I'm here to offer a partnership. She stopped pacing. What? The program needs both of us, I said. Your business expertise, my education experience. Together, we could create something revolutionary. Why would you want to work with me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. After everything I've said, everything I've done, because you were right about one thing. Education needs to change, but not through corporate takeovers or standardized metrics. Through understanding, through connection, through actually caring, she finished, sinking onto her designer couch. Like you do. Like we both could, I corrected, if we worked together. She was quiet for a long moment. I wouldn't know where to start. Start by coming to my classroom tomorrow. See what real education looks like. Then we'll talk about how to scale it. Your classroom? She looked terrified at the prospect. Unless you're scared, I challenged, seeing a familiar spark return to her eyes. Fine, she straightened her shoulders. But I'm not sitting in those tiny desks. As I left her house, Travis caught up with me in the driveway. Whatever you said in there, he smiled. It worked. She's already on her laptop researching education statistics. My phone buzzed one last time. Xander. Board meeting tomorrow. Need your decision on the position. I looked back at Charlene's house, then typed my response. I'll take it with conditions. First, I keep teaching. Second, I want Charlene as my co-director. The reply was immediate. Bold move. Why? I thought about Tommy and Maria, about Charlene's empty awards wall, about the difference between winning and succeeding. Because sometimes, I typed, the best revenge is showing someone a better way to live. Ms. Davis, I think your sister-in-law is having a breakdown, Caitlin whispered, peering through the classroom door. Charlene stood in the hallway, designer suit perfectly pressed, looking like she might bolt at any second. It was her first day observing my class, and she'd already rescheduled twice. Deep breaths, I said, opening the door. Ready? This is ridiculous, Charlene muttered, but followed me inside. I haven't been in a high school classroom since you were busy being class president and valedictorian, I finished. Calvin told me. 25 students looked up as we entered, curiosity written across their faces. Everyone, this is Ms. Mitchell. She'll be observing today as part of our new education initiative. Is she the corporate lady who used to make you cry? A voice piped up from the back. Charlene flinched. I bit back a smile. Jake, what have we said about appropriate questions? Sorry, Ms. Davis. Sorry, Ms. Mitchell. I launched into my lesson on The Great Gatsby, watching Charlene from the corner of my eye. She sat rigid in her chair, taking notes on her tablet, but I could see her expression changing as the class progressed. So, I asked the students, why does Gatsby throw those elaborate parties? To show off his money, one student called out. To get Daisy's attention, another added. To prove he's worthy, Charlene suddenly spoke up. The room fell silent. He's trying to prove he belongs in their world, that he's just as good as them, better even. The students stared at her. She cleared her throat awkwardly. I mean, that's just my interpretation. No, you're right, Maria said thoughtfully. It's like when people post their achievements on social media, trying to prove something to everyone else. Or like when my mom works extra shifts to buy designer clothes she can't afford, another student added. I watched Charlene's face as recognition dawned. These weren't just random teenagers, they were insightful young people making connections she'd never considered. The discussion continued, growing more animated. To my surprise, Charlene joined in several times, offering perspectives that actually resonated with the students. After class, she remained seated while the students filed out. That was unexpected, she said finally. The part where teenagers can think deeply, or the part where you enjoyed teaching? She shot me a look, but there was no malice in it. Both, I suppose. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I need to show you something. 20 minutes later, we sat in her home office. She pulled up a presentation on her laptop. I've been working on this since our talk, she said. A complete restructuring of the education initiative. Less focus on metrics, more on actual student engagement. See these numbers? I leaned in, surprised by the depth of her research. She'd analyzed everything from student participation rates to long-term career success correlations. This could work, I said slowly. But we'd need to keep it grounded in real classroom experience, she finished. I know, that's why... She hesitated. That's why I want to teach one class. I nearly fell out of my chair. You what? Just one, maybe a business elective or something. I need to understand this from the inside. Before I could respond, Calvin burst in. There you are. Have you seen the news? He held up his phone. The headline read, Corporate Executive Trades Boardroom for Classroom, a new model for education reform. How did they... Charlene started. One of the students must have posted about you being in class, I realized. Social media... This is perfect, Calvin exclaimed. The board will love it. Real commitment to understanding education from the ground up. Charlene looked pale. But I haven't actually agreed to. Yes, you have, I interrupted. I saw your face in that classroom today. You felt it, didn't you? The moment when everything clicks for a student? When they make connections you never expected? She was quiet for a long moment. I forgot, she finally said. Forgot what? What it feels like to learn something new, to be excited about understanding. She turned to her laptop, closing the presentation. I've spent so long trying to prove I'm the best, I forgot what it feels like to just grow. Well, I smiled. Lucky for you, I know a great teacher who can help with that. Very funny, she rolled her eyes, but she was smiling too. But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. I want to understand everything. Curriculum development, student assessment, classroom management. Careful, I warned. You might actually end up loving it. Maybe, she admitted. But if anyone at my country club asks, I'm conducting intensive field research. As we left her office, I caught sight of her awards wall. Something was different. You took down your CEO of the Year plaque, I noticed. Replaced it with something better, she said quietly. In its place hung a simple thank you card from my class, signed by all the students. Sometimes I realized the biggest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from turning them into allies. And now, please welcome back to the stage our co-directors of the National Education Innovation Program. The applause thundered through the auditorium as Charlene and I walked onto the stage together. This time, neither of us was trying to outshine the other. Last time I stood here, Charlene began, I talked about ROI and performance metrics. I was wrong. She paused, looking out at the packed audience. My sister-in-law taught me that real education isn't about numbers. It's about transformation, and not just for the students. I stepped forward. When we launched this program, people said it couldn't work. A teacher and a corporate executive, oil and water. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. But that's exactly why it did work. Because real change happens when we stop competing and start collaborating. Speaking of collaboration, Charlene smiled, we have a surprise guest. Tommy? Tommy walked onto the stage, holding his published graphic novel. The audience burst into applause. His story had become somewhat legendary in education circles. This book, he held it up, exists because Ms. Davis saw potential where everyone else saw a problem student. And now, thanks to the program she and Ms. Mitchell created, thousands of other students are finding their own paths. From the front row, Lucy wiped away tears while Caitlin, now our program director, beamed proudly. But we're not here to talk about past successes, I continued. We're here to announce the next phase. Charlene stepped forward. Starting next semester, I'm leaving the corporate world entirely. Gasps echoed through the hall. I'll be teaching full-time while continuing to co-direct this program. Because you can't transform education from the outside. You have to be in the trenches. The audience erupted. In the front row, Travis was grinning ear to ear. Next to him, Calvin looked like he might burst with pride. My sister-in-law used to mock my career choice, I said, turning to Charlene. Now she steals my lesson plans. Only because yours needs serious updating, she shot back, making the audience laugh. Who still teaches Shakespeare without digital integration? Says the woman who had to ask what TikTok was last week. Our playful banter wasn't just for show, it was who we'd become. Somewhere between classroom observations and late-night curriculum planning sessions, we'd found not just respect, but genuine friendship. After the presentation, we gathered in my classroom, the same room where this journey had started. Lucy had arranged a small celebration, complete with cheap wine and paper cups. Remember when you used to hide in here crying after family dinners? Lucy asked, passing me a cup. Now she hides in here planning lessons, Calvin laughed, wrapping an arm around my waist. I do not hide, Charlene protested, walking in with Travis. I strategically retreat to optimize lesson effectiveness. Still can't talk like a normal person, Travis teased, earning a playful swat from his wife. Caitlin arrived with Tommy and Maria, now both working for our program while pursuing their degrees. Ms. Davis, Tommy said, remember when you caught me drawing comics in class? Remember when you said you'd never read Shakespeare? I countered. Now look at him, Maria grinned, teaching creative writing to middle schoolers. Speaking of teaching, Charlene cut in, I need help with my first solo lesson plan. These teenagers are terrifying. Not so easy, is it? I smirked. What happened to teaching is just glorified babysitting? I was an idiot, she admitted freely, but at least I'm a teachable idiot. The best kind, Travis kissed her cheek. Looking around the room at these people who'd become so much more than colleagues or even family, I felt something settle into place. This wasn't the revenge I'd originally wanted. It was better. Hey, Charlene touched my arm. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it. That's what teachers do, I smiled. We see potential, even when it's hiding behind designer suits and corporate jargon. And sometimes, she added softly, we learn more than we teach. The evening wound down, but before everyone left, Tommy insisted on one last toast. To Ms. Davis and Ms. Mitchell, he raised his cup, for showing us that the best stories aren't about winning or losing, they're about growing. And to second chances, Charlene added, meeting my eyes, both giving and receiving them. As everyone clinked their paper cups, I looked at my classroom walls, now covered with a mix of student artwork and corporate achievement certificates, Shakespeare quotes, and business strategy flowcharts. It wasn't what I'd imagined when I'd first sought revenge against Charlene. It was infinitely better, because sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone fall, it's about helping them rise in a different direction. And in the process, rising yourself. Ready for tomorrow? Charlene asked as we gathered our things. Always, I smiled. We've got lessons to plan, minds to open, lives to change, she finished. And that, really, was what it had been about all along.